You know, I'm a very messy, kind of scrappy, organic kind of actor. Like, you know, we'd be shooting a scene somewhere, and I'd be doing stuff, and I'd go, "This is horrible," and like everyone knows it, and I suppose that's where you kind of earn your money. It's like just embarrassing yourself, because it is a, you know, nerve-wracking profession. It is nerve-wracking, and it kind of burns you up. But the rewards are interesting, and it's addictive, and it is a very strange job. You know, people don't really kind of acknowledge that enough. It's a strange thing to do. It really is, and now I think it's normal. Sometimes you think, you stop and you go, what do my family think I'm an asshole? Are my kids okay? Am I okay? Is this a mental illness?
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Petyr Rinaldi.
Aidan Gillen is an actor. He sat down with me in a hotel room in Midtown Manhattan to talk about the work.
Is there a general way that you initially approach every character you do? Is there an initial process that you begin to do?
I was going to say there's probably not a constant process, but there is something that I do, and there's probably more than one thing that I do, but there's one thing I always do is I always read it out loud.
Even the parts that aren't like everything?
Yeah, well, yeah, usually, I mean, I do everything, like just read the whole script, the state, like the directions, all of it, but particularly the dialogue. I mean, I'll read the other stuff too, but not, it doesn't have to be that. And that will be not just a job that I know I'm doing, but say if somebody sends us a script, and I'll read it out loud to see if I feel like I'm kind of, I can actually say the stuff, to see if I've got any good, you know, initial instinctive responses to it. And there's loads of times I can do that and go, this isn't that good, or I'm not the person for this, which is kind of hard sometimes, because I have turned down things that I know I'm the wrong person for. Because I've been the wrong person in the jobs a couple of times. It hasn't happened that much, but there's nothing worse than that, and it makes you want to give up. You know, because it's horrifying to have to go out on a stage, for instance, for like maybe a few months, and thinking, you know, I'm not the person for this. I'm doing as best I can, but you know, I may not be the right person. So getting it right and making sure you're the right person for the job is important.
But I'm so curious about that though. What makes you think you're not the right person? Because I'm sure there's a point before you fully feel comfortable in every role where you feel like this is not.
Yeah. Well, it usually works out. You know, then it's either, you know, because you make it work out, or because the people who wanted you to play it in the first place were right. I've definitely had things put my way, and I thought, really, me for this? And then it's worked out, and you go, all right, okay, they had an instinct, and they were right. And I think it's seldom enough happened to me, but the couple of times it did, it's kind of, you know, the only time it makes you feel like I don't ever want to inflict this on myself or others again, because that's how intense the intensity of acting. You know, trying to explain it to somebody without sounding like, you know, you're over, talking to people who don't understand the intensity. Of course, there are things in the world that are way more important than acting or drama or film. You know, there are, but you know, people like going to see these things, and people have to do them. But the intensity, the amount of adrenaline that goes through an actor's body on an opening night of a play, it's been measured, and it's exactly the same or more than someone who's just been in a serious car crash and is conscious. You know, you fantasize about a plane crashing into your house, the house going on fire, just some way that you can get off the hook, that you won't have to go in and do it, but you know, it'll be something, you know, you haven't caused it. It's a comet, a meteor, like really, really ridiculous stuff. And I've talked to other actors who've said the same thing. I mean, I suppose the Cassavetes film opening night would put anyone off, like wanting to be an actor. That catches it. So I don't really have a process, because I'm kind of untrained. Well, I'm not kind of untrained, I am untrained, although, you know, I learnt the ropes on the job from a young age, so I felt like it was more of an apprenticeship, which I suppose it always used to be back in, you know, the day. And when I say the day, I mean, you know, Shakespeare's day and beyond. and I was around good people, and I kind of learned. But there's not really a technique. Technique is great because it means you can say bad dialogue and get away with it, and you can, if you're not feeling it, you can do something that makes it look like you're feeling it.
And you can't do that.
I can't really do that.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I mean, some days you go home beating yourself up like crazy because you could have done it better or different. The reality of that also is, to the outsider looking at it, the difference is very slight, I think it was maybe Conor McPherson, the playwright and filmmaker and screenwriter, said, I think he had mentioned this to me once, that the difference between what you think is a great performance, say you're doing a show down the road there somewhere, and for those of you listening, we are actually quite close. We're in New York, and Broadway is just down the road. Mm-hmm. And what you think is a horrible night, it's tiny. It can be tiny. Yeah. And of course, if you think you're doing, it's not going great, it'll, hamper you, and you might be, in some kind of psychic pain throughout the night. But the difference, if you're properly rehearsed, is minimal. The other thing he pointed out to me that I hadn't ever really clocked is that actors are extremely superstitious, and both, if they had a sandwich, they had a particular thing in their sandwich on like the first preview, and the first preview work, they have to have the same sandwich at the same time the next day, and there's a lot of kind of stuff. And then I thought, actually, I do all that stuff. So there's the reading out loud.
Yeah.
There is, it's changed in recent times, in that, when I was starting out acting, there was no internet. There's so much research material that's there. Right. So to have an excuse, this is part of my job, is to sit here and watch all this brilliant stuff for like 10 hours a day.
And you feel like you're doing work.
There's nothing like, it's really enjoyable doing that at like, between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m. Maybe even have a glass of wine. Yeah. It's, you could have worse jobs than that. And then there's a bit of extra just mystery stuff, you know what I mean, which is going back into the realms of superstition and hocus pocus. But stuff comes, like I'm filming Peaky Blinders at the moment, and there's a gypsy boxer that I was quite fascinated with, who I was kind of using a little as inspiration for this character Aberama Gold I play in Peaky Blinders. And even though this guy was in his heyday in the 70s and 80s, like the 1970s and 80s, and the stuff we're doing is set in the 20s and 30s, I had a day off, and I was feeling like I wasn't really sure how to play a scene, so I thought, I'm going to find out where he lived and where he's buried. And I just took several buses and trains, and ended up in this cemetery, and I found my way. I'm going to arrive in this little town, I'm going to sniff it out, I'm going to find it, and I'm going to walk around, and I'm going to find where this man's buried, where his grave is. And I did. And it was easy. I just walked. I found it without even knowing where it was. I just walked towards it. Wow. And that's complete bullshit, it's just luck. Yeah. But then I sat there for 20 minutes and waited to see if anything happened, and it didn't. But the fact that I'd gone and I'd done that, and the stuff I saw along the way, the stuff I saw on the train, the interaction I had with the woman in the shop, the petrol station, there was all these different little things that made sense, and so, did the scene and got some inspiration from having done that. But then I was reading his autobiography, and there was this stuff started coming up, like retro post the trip, which was like, oh fuck, I walked straight to that bar. There was a place called the Black Swan, and I went out of my way down this lane thinking there'll be something down here, and then it turns out he had a boxing gym over the Black Swan. And it's not, I don't really read anything into it, it's not magic, but it's this is the opposite of drama school. Drama school is probably about speaking and like fencing and technique, whereas I'm thinking, if I walk through here, the wind is going to blow in a particular direction, and it's more into far more ethereal stuff. But that's the way I know.
And do you take this approach on the set, Whereas other people around you are tapping into their technique. Maybe it's a bad day for everyone. Maybe and they're tapping into their technique to get back in the present. And are you using some other thing that, like you're talking about?
I don't know. I know that I don't like something that's happened on various jobs, and particularly in theatre, and particularly on theatre in the UK. There's people sitting around rehearsal rooms wanting to talk about what they're about to do. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm feeling. This is what I'm feeling in this scene. This is what I'm about to do. This is what I'm thinking. And I'm thinking, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what you're thinking. And I don't want you to know what I'm thinking. And let's not even have this conversation.
Yeah.
And a lot of directors, and they kind of support this kind of thing where everyone tells everyone else what they're up to, which kind of takes away. It's like rehearsing for film.
Yeah.
I know it's worthwhile doing if there's like a technical, like a camera move or whatever, blah blah blah. But I've worked with a couple of directors. The first guy who I really noticed, not only did he not like to rehearse in film, but he liked the actors to meet for the first time on camera in the scene. And there's a guy called Dominic Savage. He doesn't write dialogue. You've got to do your own dialogue, but it's not like a total improvised. Some improvised dramas, you find people they're just kind of talking about nonsense because there's no parameters, Right. Whereas the scene is written, the script is written, but it's like Aidan walks into a hotel room with Petyr, and they discuss maybe they're going to go on holiday, but Petyr doesn't want to go to Turkey for some reason, and it may not even be as specific as that, or it may be Aidan and Petyr walk into a room. Petyr confesses that he's murdered somebody, or whatever. But that's it as far as dialogue goes. So it was a really exciting way of working. But the thing I loved that. And there's a certain amount of preparation that goes into it. Particularly this thing was about the financial crash, so you needed some of the jargon. You had to have some stuff prepared, but not too much. But the thing I really liked about it is that there was no rehearsal, because often, when they set the camera up and the actors do it for the first time, stuff happens the first time you do it that it just isn't going to happen again. Yeah, and it just can't happen again. It's just some little spark, and that's the stuff that cameras pick up. The big stuff is too big. Right. But on a set, I don't really know, it's not always the same everywhere. I know I don't like to talk too much, and that I like to save my energy. There's often a lot of chat goes on, and people talking about gossip and acting and theatre stories and all this stuff. But I was doing a play here in New York in 2003 on Broadway there. It was called The Caretaker, a Harold Pinter play. Yeah. And David Jones, who was the director of that, who directed a lot of Pinter plays and some films that Pinter had written, and was a good friend of Pinter's. He could see that I didn't really want to get into telling the fellow actors what I was up to. In that case, it was Patrick Stewart and Kyle MacLachlan. I actually talked to Kyle plenty, because me and him didn't really cross over. Even though we were playing brothers, we didn't have many scenes together. But I didn't really want Patrick Stewart to know what I was up to, and he was probably the first director I'd worked with who actually came up to me and said, "I see what you're doing, and just I want you to keep that up. Just keep to yourself and be mysterious, and that'll work on stage," which it did.
And do you think he was frustrated by it, Stewart?
I don't know. But this isn't like head game, like fucking Werner Fassbinder stuff of like really fucking people's heads. Yeah. I mean, it's not that kind of stuff. Yeah. This was just normal. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned.
And what you need.
It wasn't playing games. It wasn't like Jim Carrey doing Andy Kaufman. Yeah. I mean, that film was kind of horrifying, like Andy and Jim, or Jim and Andy. Did you see it?
Yes, I loved it.
If they had the energy, if that madness was in the film, the film would have been better. But I felt sorry for Milos Forman, because you could just see he was pulling his hair out, going, what the fuck's going on? There's a guy with a paper bag driving his car into the wall.
They should have just started rolling and just had, just started making the film that.
That's what I would have done. Yeah. I mean, a lot of my favorite films have actors in them who you don't know who they are. Like I'll always believe. I'll believe Linda Manns in Days of Heaven. you know, more than I'll believe Brad Pitt and Troy. And it's not that I've got anything against, but I just know who he is, and he's in magazines all the time or whatever. But Linda Manz is like a really raw 10-year-old actress or whatever, and you're just compelled to watch because you think this is really the person.
Yes.
So how do we get into that?
I don't know, but I want to I want to just throw out a name. It's somebody that I knew that you did at least a couple scenes with, and maybe it'll spark something. Maybe you won't remember him at all. Sam Coppola, The Wire. He played the mayor before you.
He was like the mayor's advisor, and maybe
Yeah,
he was the
okay.
mayor before the mayor. But we had a scene in the diner, and it was one of the first scenes I did where he said that like he described it as a big bowl of shit.
Yes,
that you stir around.
Yes.
And yes, so
I just thought maybe he made an impact on you, but he
did.
He did.
But you know, no, I don't know. Like, I just it was one scene,
Yeah.
and often you don't even know who people's names are. I don't care what their names are. I just want to do the scene, and if I think they're the person, you know, the character name is, you know, what you want.
Right.
But he was great, and I loved doing that scene. It was quite a long one. You know, when you're jumping into something like that. I mean, I was confident enough.
Yeah.
But like, it was good to have a meaty scene, but to have people who have like a generosity of spirit, knowing that you're kind of just starting, that you might be nervous, and that like, you know.
Yeah.
And the best thing they can do is just be their character.
Yeah.
And make you believe that they fucking believe who you are.
Yeah.
But Sam was actually a really nice guy, and I remember really well shooting that scene. And I remember the diner. It was the same diner I shot the scene with Frankie Faison in.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, Sam was a great.
Where I kind of say, what kind of sandwich would I have? I don't, you know. They say, oh yeah, you count some, and you'd have this sandwich. You know, it was just.
I mean, how did you? Just the politics of Baltimore. Like you probably didn't know anything about, you know, American politics in that way, right? I mean,
not much. I mean, not local politics. You know, I know, of course, because we all know good because of, you know, American politics and American presidential stuff. It's reported everywhere, and it's because it's such an influential position. So, of course, you know, I was familiar with, you know, what Reagan would be up to, or what Bush would be up to, or what, you know, JFK would be up to. But when it came to local politics, no, I didn't know a lot, and I'd never played a politician. I've since played a couple, you know. I thought it was a bit of a stretch, but to be honest, like when I got there to Baltimore, they put us into the hands of Bill Zorzi, who is a former political journalist from the Baltimore Sun. And straight away we went down to City Hall, and we walked. Because you can walk into City Hall and you know, look around. I was just asking rapid fire questions. He was looking at me going, "This guy can't play a politician. I don't like looking at him at all. He looks like a fucking homeless wannabe rock star or something." Because I had a lot of hair and, you know, just a pair of, you know, Converse, and I don't know. He was worried when he saw me. He was worried. But I'm inquisitive, and I knew I'm starting, you know, tomorrow. So let's get this. Let's get it going. And it's amazing how, you know, politics isn't. Once you're talking to people who know about it, and you're in the place where it happens, it's you see it's really quite different than just, you know, what you see on television, particularly local politics. But you know, I did become, you know, embroiled in it. But those guys wouldn't let anything, like people like David Simon and Zorzi, they're not going to let anything pass that's not, you know, authentic. Yeah. And the writing's authentic. You know, if the writing's authentic, all you've got to do is say it. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And you know that it is authentic. And if there's something that I don't understand about, like, you know, I think it was, you know, they're simple things. You know, you send an email like, what is the GOP, or, you know, tell me a bit more about Spiro Agnew, and, you know, there's just things you don't know, and you get, like, they would be like on you with tons of information. And like, you know, I don't mean on you in an imposing way, but like they would be, you know, because they want it to be right, and if it's you knowing what you're talking about, as you should do. So it was, you know, a whole new education, but I loved it, and I loved that time doing that show. It was like, I can't imagine my life without it, you know.
I know you must be aware of how much people hate your character on Game of Thrones, right? But has that ever affected the performance in any way?
Other than you want to try and make people like you, which is always fun if you're playing a villainous role. You always try and I want people to have sympathy for me. I want people to have, and I played a few villains, and I always try and make people like me if I'm playing a villain. And no, it doesn't. It's a character, and you're supposed to not like them. I'm trying to make them like me. I've had more people say to me, "It's really weird, but I like you," than that have said, "I don't like you."
Huh.
And that's the effect that I was aiming for.
So you feel like that's when the real success happens, instead of people saying, "I hate you,"
but I like you.
Right. That's so cool. You're at Comic-Con now. I mean, that must be I once was there, and I will not be going again. I mean, just as a person in there, why on earth? You don't seem like the kind of guy that would like that kind of thing.
I'm there because I'm playing the lead in a show that's been launched at Comic-Con, so I have to be there. And
you're forced.
No, I'm not forced. It's part of the contract, but I'm not
right.
forced. I understand how this stuff works, and we're in a safe environment there. It's not like I've got to sit there and sign pictures with an envelope. My idea of Comic-Con, because I knew actors had done it, they said, it's great. You bring your mate, you have a bag, and people sign a picture, and they give you a 10, and I kind of love that in a way. And then you come back in the plane. Like somebody was telling me about an actor who's now really well known, and he was well known then, but he's a real star now. But that he'd come over to Comic-Con, but he brought his friend with him because you can only take a certain amount of cash through customs. And he signed all his photos, and they had $5,000 each in fucking bags, and brought it back because I think it was the limit was $5,000 in cash, which I think is. I like that old school economics. I'm going to go and do some stuff to do with my craft. People like the stuff I've done. I'm going to come home with a bag of money. I like it. Yeah. I'm not into doing that stuff. Yeah. But the whole fan thing, particularly if you're working in a fantasy or sci-fi. I mean, the fans are what make that. They really make that stuff. It's them being passionate about it that makes that stuff happen, and that makes it huge. And I don't have any issue with it at all. I mean, so we go along, we do a panel, we do a couple of interviews. That's it. It's not actually that hard. Mm. So I did San Diego Comic-Con. I did this one, and I get invited to a lot of them. Yeah. I've never done them. I get invited to a lot of these things, and you can get a serious, paycheck for just showing up. Right. Transylvania Comic-Con sounded interesting, and I was tempted on that one, but I didn't go.
Sounds like a trap, but it doesn't exist.
I came back, but I had no blood.
Acting is such a strange profession because there seems to be, for most of it in a career, there's panic that another job is not going to come. And I'm assuming that ends at a certain point, and then you pick what you want to do. But I've been interviewing some people that I would think that partition has happened, and it doesn't seem, their panic doesn't seem to have gone away.
My panic is that another job is going to come.
You've answered my question.
My mother, she's an Irish mother, and I don't know, Italian mothers and Jewish mothers. There's all these people say the thing about this mother, but kind of mothers are kind of a bit of universal thing. Still kind of wonders about that kind of stuff. Saying, really, I'm saying I'm finishing on Game of Thrones next week. She's going, what? My God, what are you gonna do? John, do you want some money? Here's 20. Here, do you want 20 euros? I'm like, I'm fine. It's okay. Just at least No, I never had that actually. To be honest, I never had that insecurity about. I suppose I felt secure enough in that I've always felt like the best stuff is kind of coming, and that I know I'm not. I'm a very messy, kind of scrappy, organic kind of actor. We'd be shooting a scene somewhere, and I'd be doing stuff, and I'd go, "This is horrible, and like everyone knows it, and that's just, I suppose that's where you kind of earn your money. It's like just embarrassing yourself. And some people can come in, and I have a great admiration for people who come in and do like, have one day on a film and just come in and like nail it.
Yeah.
Whereas I need to kind of take a bit more time with kind of getting to know people and feeling comfortable, kind of. So because I've done that a couple of times, come in and done ones, and it's not. I felt like I shouldn't have done that. Not strong enough. But I don't have that panic or that insecurity. Lots of panic in relation to just day to day working.
Yeah. Because
it is a nerve wracking profession. It is nerve wracking, and it kind of burns you up. But the rewards are interesting, and it's addictive, and it is a very strange job. People don't really kind of acknowledge that enough.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing to do. It really is.
Yeah.
And now I think it's normal,
So that's even more strange.
And I wonder. I thought, what sometimes you think, you stop and you go, what do my family? Do my family think I'm an asshole? Are my kids okay? Am I okay? Is this a mental illness?
Yes. And it's kind of shocking more people aren't asking themselves that do it, right?
I think people, this again, going back to opening night, the Cassavetes film, I think that kind of gets it.
Yeah.
I was shown Cassavetes first by Jez Butterworth, and I did his first play, which was a play called Mojo, and we did it over 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And we did a film of it, and before we did the film, he said, I want you to watch a film. He brought in Shadows, Cassavetes, and he said, this is the kind of thing I want to do. And then he brought in Killing of a Chinese Book, and he said, this is what I want it to look like. So I want this loose kind of energy, and I want it to look like this.
Oh, that's so cool.
And
where's that film now? Can we see that film?
It's very, very hard to find. It's for some reason it's kind of not available. They showed it at the Lincoln Center when the Ferryman, when Jerusalem was on here on Broadway.
About 10 years
they
ago.
showed it up on, and we got a rave review in the New York Times from it because it was shown in the New York Film Festival in like '97 or something. But it's not only a hidden gem, but a probably like very, very well hidden gem.
Yeah.
Locked away in a safe somewhere.
Right.
It's flawed.
Yeah.
Plenty.
Yeah, I bet.
Anyway, blah blah blah. Cassavetes, he showed us the stuff, and
had you seen a Cassavetes movie before?
no, I hadn't. And then another filmmaker I worked with, the guy called Jamie Thraves, who I've done a few things with, had similarly before we shot a film called The Lowdown, which, speaking of lost gems, was recently in the Observer newspaper, which is the Guardian Observer, was kind of named one of 30 like hidden lost gems of cinema, and it's a very loose kind of ambling kind of semi-improv thing about a few 30-year-olds who haven't really got to where they want to in life, kind of cruising through North London, northeast London. But he showed us the Cassavetes, the Scorsese film, which is very like Who's That Knocking on the Door?
Who's that? Yeah,
Who's That Knocking on My Door? Which is almost like a Cassavetes film.
Yeah.
And then so Cassavetes made those kind of films and continued making them. Scorsese made a very similar kind of film and then made Mean Streets and then made Taxi Driver and went down a whole other thing, but it was almost the same thing.
Yes.
But it's nice to be working with people who will, who know their shit and who know cinema and will turn you onto stuff that you'll still be, I'm always looking for, when I'm coming up to a job, I'm looking for clues, even if it's like getting a train out to, a cemetery or, I don't have a process and I don't feel like I know kind of what I'm doing. And I have some stuff to fall back on, but like I feel in the kind of way I approach things is very similar to the way I would have approached stuff, which when I was 16, 17, it's like I don't really know what I'm doing here. I don't have a structure, so I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna ask people lots of things. I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna watch that. It's gonna consume over the next, number of months. So it feels new. Like it always feels new all the time.
Aidan Gillen, thank you.
Thanks.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. It's produced by Spencer Rain. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.